Hey everybody, it's Alison Heikkila. Thanks so much for joining me today. There is a new Kawaii Cuties release today, and it's not one set, but it's two sets. Kawaii Cuties is one of the collections from Stamp Anything. You've seen me work with their products before. I use their stencils all the time, and I use some of their chibi stamps and whatnot, but the Kawaii Cuties are adorable. So the two sets that are out today, this is the first one. This is called You Know the Drill. It's adorable. I love tools, so I'm pretty stoked about this one. And these are the coordinating outline dies. You can get them together or separate. But we're not using this in this video today. I have some other projects that I'll share with them, but that's not for today. Today we're going to use A Little Birdie Told Me. Here are the stamps. So cute. And the coordinating outline dies. And again, you can get these separate or together. They're really, really cute. This is a card that I have already made using this set in conjunction with their beach day paper. Let me grab that. This is a great paper pack, and I used the clouds and the suns, and I thought it came out really cute, and I colored everything else with Copics. But we're not making this today. We're going to make something else. We are going to use this paper, though. We're going to use this one. I think it'll be really cute. So how about we get started? I started off by stamping two of my birds with Memento ink on Copic friendly paper, and I decided to go with blue birds. So I grabbed my B12 and I'm going to color the entire bird with the B12 and then add shading as well. So you'll see that I'm going to saturate the head with the B12 and then I'm going in with B04. And then I'm going to go back to the 12 and blend that out, and then I'm going to add some B05. There are a billion ways that you can color these birds. There are a billion techniques that you can use when you color these birds. It really just depends on what you want. I wanted a very smooth blend, so I find that if I saturate the area with the lightest shade first and then add my darker tones on top of that, it just helps everything to blend a little bit more, and I have less harsh lines. I do wind up going back and forth between the colors a little bit to get them a little bit smoother, but it's just one of the number of different ways that I like to work with my Copics. So again, you can do this in a multitude of ways. It's just whatever you feel comfortable with. I'm using E00 on the belly, and then I'll grab some E02 just for some shading. And then I'm going to grab YR23, which is the color that I like to use for the beak and the feet on the other bird, because you can see the feet on the other bird. I did not think that there was enough contrast between the bees, so I decided to grab B26 just to get some nice dark blue in there. And I was really happy with that decision afterwards. I thought it gave it some nice depth, and that's what I did. I just kind of went back and forth with blending. The nice things about these Kawaii Cutie stamps is that they're really small and you can color them up pretty quickly. So that's the first bird. I did the second bird exactly the same way with exactly the same colors. I just did it off screen so that you didn't need to watch me do it again. And then I ran them through my die cut machine with the outline dies, and they look adorable. Now I have the pattern paper that I showed you earlier, and I want to have a diagonal. I tend to do this style card with the Kawaii Cuties kind of often. Like I'll have a big chunk of pattern paper and then a couple of the stamped images die cut off to the side or something. It just works for me. I think they come out really cute that way because these images are small. You know, you can repeat stamp, which is something else that I like to do, but I tend to use some pattern paper. Stamp Anything has really great pattern paper, so why not use it with these adorable stamps? So I had cut it at a diagonal there, and I'm just making sure that I like how much paper there is and where the birds are going to be and all of that, and I wanted to make a sky. So I grabbed the Roses stencil with some Tumbled Glass Distress ink, and I'm struggling to get those birds off. This keeps happening. I just couldn't get my fingers to grab anything. I thought that this Roses stencil would work as kind of an abstract sky. And I'm trying to figure out if I want to have the whole thing covered. You can see how the roses kind of stop at the top, but because it's a repeated pattern, I can just overlap the roses and kind of adjust the stencil up, down, to the side, whatever, and just continue the pattern. So that's what I decided to do. I wasn't sure if I was going to go at an angle, but it really is unnecessary. So you can see how I lifted it up, just realigned it, and just filled in the gaps that I had. And that worked out really well. There's a little bit of residual blue ink on my stencil there, so it's not exactly just tumbled glass, but it works out pretty well. And I think it looks like a nice sky. I like to add some ribbon or some washi tape on top of the edge of the pattern paper, just to kind of meld the layers together a little bit. It's not quite as harsh. Plus, I like the texture. I like using ribbon. I have a ton of ribbon, so why not use it? I just think it gives everything kind of more of a finished edge. You don't have to do this, but I just like to. You can even use a strip of paper if you want. I just think that it gives it a really nice look when you do that. I grabbed my Barely Arts glue to apply the ribbon. Normally, I don't use a wet glue when I'm applying ribbon. I grabbed my tape runner, but I didn't feel like pulling it out and fiddling with it on camera, so I figured that the wet glue would just be fine. This is a pretty thick ribbon, and it's opaque, so I knew that the adhesive wouldn't show through the ribbon once it was on there, so that's okay. And I'm using my scissors, and I used my paper scissors for this. I'm cringing as I'm looking at myself do that. I didn't feel like grabbing my fabric scissors, but it's okay. Everything will be fine. If you use fabric scissors, you understand what I'm talking about here. So I'm adding some additional tumbled glass to the edge just to kind of give it a vignette look, kind of bring your eye into the card a little bit more, deepen those edges. I think that it adds a little bit more drama for the card. And now I'm just kind of figuring out where I want those birds to go, and I have my sentiment all picked out. I keep a bag of thin strips of cardstock in the drawer of my desk, and that's what I typically use when I'm making sentiment strips. So I grabbed my Twilight VersaFine Clair ink. That is my second favorite ink to use as far as color goes. Nocturne is probably my favorite because it's black, but when I don't want it to be black, I use the Twilight. So that first stamping was a little bit off kilter. It's hard for me to line everything up perfectly when I'm filming because my camera's in the way of where my head would need to go to make sure everything was right where it needed to be. So I just stamped it again. I grabbed some pink cardstock that I had in my stash that worked really well with the pink lines that are on the pattern paper. And I felt that the sentiment needed to stand out a little bit more, which is why I grabbed it. So I'm just going to apply it right to that cardstock, and then we will stick it on the card itself. Now that ribbon is stuck down pretty good. So I tried to lift it up a little bit, but it wasn't coming. So I decided instead to just chop the edge off a little bit, right at the corner there, so that it would fit under the ribbon and it would look a little bit more seamless and I wouldn't have any funny edges sticking out from where the ribbon starts. So I'm just laying it right on top of where one of those pink stripes are so I don't break up the pattern too much. And then I'm going to chop off the excess after I get the birds glued down. Again, I'm using my Barely Arts glue for that. I will be pulling out my On Point glue because we're going to add some sequins, because who doesn't like a little shine on their card? And I felt that it needed a little something extra on the card. So I'm just chopping that edge off. And now I'm going to grab my sequins. So these are from Doodles Paper Playground, which unfortunately is no longer in business, but there are plenty of places out there that you can get assorted sequins from. I just grabbed a bunch of blues, various types. Some of them have a spiral, some of them are confetti so they don't have a hole in them. Some of them are opalescent. I like to use a whole plethora of different styles and sizes just for a little bit more interest. I decided to throw a couple of the very small glittery ones on either side of the sentiment. Not for any particular reason. One of them fell there and I was like, oh, that looks kind of good there. So I'm going to fiddle with these a little bit more, and then I'm going to use my On Point glue for that. You can, of course, use Barely Arts glue. I just happen to like the On Point. It starts off clear to get on the get-go. It gives you just enough move time. It sits really nicely when you adhere everything, but you can use whatever you've got. So now I've got my pokey tool and my glue in my right hand, and I've got my jewel picker in my left hand. And this is just the method that I use to pick everything up and put it down again. I find that sometimes the sequins likes to stick to my jewel picker a little too much, so the pokey tool helps me push it off of the jewel picker and get it into place again. And it's just a nice, easy, quick technique to get everything in place properly. I lost the sequins. I couldn't figure out where it went, and it was actually stuck to the glue. I don't even know how that happened. I'm watching myself doing it, and I still don't know how it happened. But that's the card. I hope you like it. I think it came out really cute. I've got another card on my blog I showed you at the beginning, and then tomorrow I'll have a couple of other projects using the other set that's coming out today. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I hope that you have a fantastic day. Be well, stay safe, peace out.